Welcome to the December the 5th, 2023 meeting of the City Council of Half Moon Bay. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Here.
Councilmember Reddick?
Here.
Councilmember Arbeck?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jimenez?
Here.
Mayor Penrose?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Before we start the rest of tonight's meeting, I have a few words I'd like to say about our dear friend Don Horsley, who passed on November the 24th. We got the news that he had passed. He was our county sheriff. He was our county supervisor. Don was a steadfast supporter of Half Moon Bay and coastside issues, a tireless, dedicated public servant his entire career, and a shining example of what it means to serve your community. His 14 years as San Mateo County Sheriff was marked by implementation of innovative and progressive policies which modernized that department and made it into a showcase of how local law enforcement can change with the times and grow to better serve the public. Don served 3 terms on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, and his focus was very clearly on social issues and helping those most in need throughout the county's communities, including the coast side. It's well known that Don's compassion and empathy were paramount in guiding his actions. And throughout his time on the board, he was a good friend of Half Moon Bay and of the coast side. As county supervisor representing District 3, Don put a lot of attention on coastside challenges, including here in Half Moon Bay, offering his involvement, advice, leadership, and more often than not, his ability to gain county funds for a variety of projects. We are so proud to have worked with Don on many crucial issues and projects over the years. And without fail, he brought his wisdom, his vast experience, his understanding, and his commitment to making people's lives better. Among the projects that Don gave his time and energy to here in Half Moon Bay and the coast side were the San Mateo County Farm Worker Advisory Commission, our CARES program, Crisis Assistance Response and Evaluation Services, the construction of our beautiful Half Moon Bay Library, many elements of our emergency services activities, the Coastside Medical Clinic, the Pescadero Town Plaza, Tunitas Creek Beach, the Advisory Board for the Coastside Victims Fund, a great deal of support for efforts to address homelessness and mental health issues, including the purchase of the Coast House here in Half Moon Bay, and many, many more, too numerous to mention. Don Horsley will be greatly missed, but he will always be remembered. I'd like us to just bow our heads for 1 minute and think of how wonderful and grateful we are that we have working with us and for us. Thank you. We're moving on to approval of tonight's agenda. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. And now we move on to proclamations and presentations. We have 2 tonight. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration presentation is first.
Awesome, thanks. Good evening, my name is Brian Garcia. I am a meteorologist with the National Weather Service serving the San Francisco Bay Area and Monterey Bay regions. And first of all, I'd like to thank Carla Way for his invitation to come up here and give a presentation to you all and your communities. So tonight, hopefully you can see the images on your screens in front of you. So I'm going to go through these in pretty short order. So if you're ready, we will, does this thing actually click? On. There we go, perfect. So this is the...
Can you make sure to speak in the microphone, please, for interpretation?
Yep, I'll do my best. I also don't want to blow you guys out. So this is what we're going to go through tonight. There are several bullets here, and we will go through them very rapidly. First of all, last winter, as you remember, was extremely wet. So you can see all those purples there. Those purples are upwards of about 200 to 300% of our average annual precipitation. We got a lot of water last year, and most of it came in that short period in late December, early January, then again in March timeframe. As such, the drought status for the state of California, you can see here on the map, is on the left there. It's pretty much blank on that map. We have a couple pockets of yellow there, and those yellow areas are just abnormally dry. It doesn't mean that it doesn't show any drought. A year ago, that map on the right shows deep drought across the state. So we busted a drought in one wet season. It was pretty impressive. Looking forward to this winter, you can see this map is the U.S. seasonal drought outlook, and this is valid through the month of December, January, and February. And you can see California there is just blank. And if you look at the legend down on the right, the blank one says no drought. So we are not looking about going into another drought again. So what we look at a lot for the winter time frame is what we call El Nino Southern Oscillation. That's the scientific phrase for the El Nino La Nina oscillation. And so just really quickly, we'll go from the upper right there in La Nina, which we spent the last 3 winters in. In La Nina conditions, effectively what happens is we have stronger trade winds across the equatorial Pacific. And it blows all of the warm surface waters from the eastern side of the Pacific out over to the western side, ultimately giving way to very cold subsurface water coming up along the coast of South America. Conversely, on the upper left here, the trade winds slack off and they allow the warm sea surface temperatures to slide over towards the east, up across the coast of South America, and that's what we call the El Nino conditions. On the bottom left is sea surface temperatures as of 2 days ago. And what we like to see is very warm waters out across Indonesia, just north of Australia there, and cooler waters off of South America. Then on the right, we compare the current temperatures to what we see normally. And those are what we call the anomalies. And across that equatorial Pacific region, you can see a lot of red and oranges. That means we are much, much warmer than normal. And as such, we are in an El Nino advisory as of current. Looking at the projection for the winter, out on the upper left there, you'll see a black line. That is the observations that we have had over the summer months and into the early fall. And then as we project forward with our models, you can see that we continue to see the models go up before they start to slide down. And when we start to slide down into that kind of greenish area, that ENSO neutral, the El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral phase, it's not until we get to the spring. So we're going to spend all winter in El Nino. So what does that mean? This is the typical weather pattern for El Nino winters. What we get is the jet stream really dips south and cuts across northern Mexico and across the southern part of the United States. And it tends to be more wet, while the northwest stays warmer and drier typically. There are 2 things I want to point out here. San Mateo County and coast side out here, it's right on the edge of that fuzzy green area. And then the second thing I want to point out is this area of low pressure up here. That area of low pressure should be off to the off to the northwest a little bit more, that's what's going to give us a lot of open ocean swell this winter. So we'll be worried about big surf conditions as well this winter. But not all El Niños are created equal. Looking at this graph, we are in a strong El Nino, and looking at the historically strong El Niños from 57-58 winter all the way to the winter of 2015-2016, you can see the green areas are the wet years, and then the brown ones are the dry years. So we have a mix of wet and dry. Typically, we think of El Nino as being wet. That's because a lot of us remember 82, 83, and 97, 98. But we forget a lot of the time, 2015, 2016, that winter was about 80% of average annual precipitation, and Super Bowl 50 was over in Santa Clara, and it was sunny and beautiful. So just because we're saying El Nino, it's not a slam dunk that we're going to be wet. It's just the odds tilt towards being wet. So now we're going to look at outlooks. This first one, and I'm just going to orient you here, and then we're going to rip through the rest of them. This is the outlook for December. On the left, you'll see the temperature outlook, and on the right, you'll see the precipitation outlook. The above, like for the temperature, for example, over the center part of the country, just says that the probability is higher of being above normal for temperature. And if we look at precipitation there in the Pacific Northwest, it says above, it's just a higher probability of being above normal for precipitation. Across our areas on these maps for December, we're equal chances, which is the meteorological equivalent of a shrug. There's just no good guidance leaning either way. So looking at the seasonal outlook, these are our core wet months, December, January, February. So this is the 3-month block looking at it. So for the seasonal temperature, we are expecting to have a higher probability of being above normal for temperature. It doesn't mean we won't have cold snaps. We will get cold. It's winter. The sun angles are low, the days are short, and we will get cold air from the north filtering in. But when taken as an average, we will likely be warmer than normal. On the right there, you see that we are higher probabilities of being above normal for precipitation. And that's that El Nino pattern taking effect. Going to the next seasonal time frame, this is January, February, March. Again, higher probabilities of being above normal for temperature, and we continue to see higher probabilities of being above normal for precipitation. And then going into February, March, April, you can see equal chances really start to take over, so there's no clear pattern one way or another. So when I look at these maps, just so you know, I look at from December, equal chances for precipitation, then we get December, January, February above, and January, February, March above. This tells me that we're looking at a January, February timeframe for the highest probabilities of our precipitation for this winter. Stepping forward just through some other quick winter threats, king tides continue to be problematic, especially as we see large swells roll in as well as storm surge. That could cause water levels to rise and coastal flooding to occur. Dangerous surf, of course, is a major issue. We saw, unfortunately, down at Martin's Beach, the death of 2 people already this winter with some bigger surf rolling in. It was probably about 10 to 13 feet out there that day. And then coastal flooding and erosion with big surf, high tides, storm surge, and rain runoff out of the rivers. We can actually see some deformation, some areas where the rainwater can't get into the ocean, and it can actually spread through some of the coastal areas. So we can see some flooding due to those causes. I also wanted to show this just because it is really amazing to me. This is the billion-dollar disasters, billion-dollar-plus disasters we've had so far this year through the end of October. We've had 25 of them across the U.S. This is the most we have ever seen. So billion-dollar disasters are becoming more prevalent across the country. At the end of the day, you got to be ready for anything, though. All it takes is one storm to disrupt a community, disrupt our commerce, and disrupt our lives. And sadly, it can take lives as well. So if Half Moon Bay, and I'm sure you are, ready for any of the storms that come your way, you'll be ready for the entire winter as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. I think I know what's going to happen. It's going to be wet in January and February, right? And a little warmer this winter.
You are correct.
All right. Does anyone on council have any questions? No?
Not a question, just a statement that I think we're really seeing the effect of climate change. I hope you'll agree that it's really important that we do everything we can to mitigate the effects of climate change.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I think when you make that kind of a statement, you have to say you heard it here first, folks. Right? Got to be on record.
Thank you. You're better at that than I am, Matthew. Okay, next we have Peninsula Clean Energy to present to us, and this is great. We've been waiting for you.
Well, we're delighted to be here, and thank you so much for inviting us. Good evening, Mayor and council members, staff, and community. We are excited to join you this evening to share some information about Peninsula Clean Energy programs and activities in Half Moon Bay. My name is Mark Hirschman. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Peninsula Clean Energy. I have with me Alejandra Posada. Alejandra is our Programs Manager for Customer Programs, and I believe virtually we have Blake Hershaft, who's our Programs Manager for Buildings. So I'm hoping Blake is there. Just a couple of comments at the outset. As a charter member of Peninsula Clean Energy, Half Moon Bay has been at the forefront of community choice energy. We value your city's partnership and the guidance and leadership in particular of council members Robrak and Jimenez, who serve as our board member and our board alternate. And we also want to acknowledge the very close working relationship with city staff over the many years, and in particular Veronica and her contributions to our efforts in Half Moon Bay. We're very proud to play an active role in support of Half Moon Bay's efforts to address climate change. Together, we provide Half Moon Bay's municipal facilities with 100% carbon-free electricity, largely generated from wind and solar sources. And because we don't have shareholders, we're able to provide Half Moon Bay customers with a significant discount on their energy generation. So without further comment, I'd like to turn it over to Alejandra and Blake to guide you through some information about our programs, and we look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Alejandra Posada. I'm the Programs Manager for Peninsula Clean Energy. I focus on our residential customer programs. I will be covering some information about Peninsula Clean Energy and the services that we offered. The presentation will be focused on residential programs, and I will be covering a lot of information, so flying through a lot of the slides, but happy to answer questions at the end. Maybe a little lower, okay. So just to start off, our vision as an agency is to provide a sustainable world with clean energy for everyone. So who is Peninsula Clean Energy? We are the local public agency that provides cleaner energy at lower rates to all of San Mateo County and the city of Los Banos. We were launched in 2016 by the 20 cities here in the county to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as Mark mentioned, our board is made up of elected officials, 1 from each city and 2 from the county. So we are locally governed, and the board drives all the strategy and the programs that we offer. So just a little bit about how it works. Oftentimes people get confused about our role versus PG&E. So in terms of electricity, customers here in Half Moon Bay are still PG&E, but they're also Peninsula Clean Energy customers. So how the roles are split up is we provide the electricity generation, and our power is 100% carbon-free, which that power mix is cleaner than residents would otherwise be getting from PG&E. However, PG&E still maintains all on the infrastructure, all the transmission and distribution grid. So the customers still receive one single bill. It's just that the lines, like the charges that were previously in one line, are now split up, and residents get to benefit from savings. Our generation rates are 5% cheaper, and residents can still continue to participate in any PG&E rebate programs that they offer, as well as Peninsula Clean Energy programs. So since 2016, when we were launched, we have saved San Mateo County residents $107 million by our 5% generation bill reduction. And we have reduced greenhouse gas emissions on the electricity portion in the county by 98%. So our first step is decarbonizing the grid. As I already mentioned, we already provide 100% carbon-free power on an annualized basis. Our goal is to cost-effectively deliver 100% renewable energy on a 24/7 basis, and the goal here is to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions during high usage hours from fossil fuel plants that still generate electricity. So after that, I'll go slower. So after decarbonizing the grid, the next step, as an agency focused on greenhouse gas emissions reduction, is to use that clean electricity to reduce emissions from the transportation and the building sector. So these are a summary of the services that we provide to communities focused on electric transportation. I do have another slide on buildings. I'll go through them quickly. So we offer used EV incentives or rebates. We offer e-bike rebates. We also have EV charger incentives and technical assistance for cities, workplaces, and multifamily buildings. We know that EV charging is a major barrier, especially in multifamily buildings. So that is a big focus of ours, is getting more chargers out there that are publicly accessible. We also have fleet electrification technical assistance that all agencies can take advantage of. So we help cities electrify their fleets. And we have an EV managed charging program that essentially helps EV owners charge during times when there's more carbon-free power, so when it's more clean to do so. So again, since the presentation is focused on residential programs, in 2024, these are some of the rebates that will be available for used vehicles. And it's a combination of Peninsula Clean Energy, PG&E, and also federal incentives. So the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed brought a lot of incentives for building electrification and transportation electrification, so just to help taxpayers move to cleaner appliances, and that's part of it. So as I mentioned, all programs that we offer can be stacked with PG&E's programs, so this just shows what total combined incentives would look like, depending on the vehicle price, largely driven by the federal incentives. And there are income qualifications for those rebates. So now moving on to electric buildings. This is where I'll spend a bit more time. We offer heat pump water heater rebates and heat pump HVAC or heating and cooling rebates. We also offer a 0% loan. We also offer free home upgrades for income qualified residents. And although that program is currently closed now, it will reopen next year and it will be much bigger. We also offer solar and storage for public buildings. So we help public agencies put solar and battery storage in their locally owned buildings. And then we also offer free technical assistance for electrifying new buildings. So now getting more into the detail of our building electrification incentives. So again, this is helping residents swap out their gas appliances for cleaner, more efficient electric appliances. So two of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions within a home are water heating and space heating. The majority of homes in San Mateo County have gas water heaters and gas furnaces or space heaters. So our rebates are really intended to help those buildings or those homeowners transition away from those fossil fuel appliances to cleaner, more efficient alternatives, again, focused on the largest gas users. So we offer a $2,000 heat pump water heater rebate, a $2,500 heat pump HVAC, or again, space and cooling rebate. And then some residents, if they need to change out their main electrical panel or install a sub-panel to facilitate the installation of one of these two appliances, we also offer a $1,000 rebate. In addition to that, we offer a bonus $1,000 rebate for both the water heater and HVAC for residents that are income qualified based on whether they qualify for the PG&E bill discount program. And on top of the rebates, we also offer a 0% interest loan. So residents can stack both the rebates and the loan, and it's up to $10,000. So just a little bit about the requirements and the processes for both of those programs. So for the rebates are more straightforward. Really, any resident in any residential property in San Mateo County qualifies. There's no contract requirements. Even self-installations are allowed as long as the homeowner gets a building permit, of course. And then the process for applying is just simple. After installation, they fill out an application form, and we send the rebate to the customer, unless the rebate was provided as an upfront discount by the contractor, in which case we would send it to them. However, for the loan, there is more added eligibility criteria. So the applicant has to be the PG&E account holder. So who's the person whose name the bill is under has to be the loanee, the person actually taking out the loan. We also look at their past payment history. We're not doing any credit checks, but we are looking at their payment history, and as long as they paid their last 3 months in full, then they qualify. And then unlike the rebates, the loan does have to be applied for before installation, so it's not something that residents can get after the fact. And then they also do have to use an approved contractor because of the fact that we send payment to the contractor for both the loan and the rebate on the customer's behalf. Just so, one of the benefits of the loan is if you don't have the upfront money, you don't have to front that, so that's why we paid the contractor directly. So just covering some other regional, state, and federal incentives, because I believe residents may be interested in these too, and we are definitely not the only program that offers incentives for switching out to electric appliances. I won't cover them in detail, but just going through them briefly, as I already mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act passed tax credits for new technology, including electric vehicles, but there's tax credits now for heat pump water heaters, and this is new as of January of this year. So there's tax credits for heat pump water heaters, heat pump HVAC systems, electrical panels, solar, and battery storage. There's also the Tech Clean California. It's a statewide program that offers rebates for heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC. The heat pump water heater rebate actually just launched on October 31st, so it is a brand new incentive that's available, and that's quite large, so I'll cover more of that in the next slide. There's also the California Energy Smart Home program that offers rebates for whole home electrification projects, so that's for property owners that are getting rid of all their gas appliances and even capping their gas line. There's also Golden State rebates. That program offers essentially retailer like Home Depot and Lowe's coupons for certain appliances, such as heat pump water heaters, smart thermostats, and other equipment. Then there's the BayREN Home Plus program. BayREN is a Bay Area-wide program that offers rebates for energy efficiency and a small rebate for heat pump water heaters. So I know that's a lot, and I know that as a resident, I would think that's a lot too. I only know the details of a lot of these programs because it's what I do for a living. So really the best website that we always direct residents to is the switcheson.org. That is the best resource for finding all incentives, federal, regional, state. Ours are listed there as well. And you can put in your zip code and find the different rebates there. So I'm just going to cover a heat pump water heater example simply because the rebates that launched on October 31st are so large that they're just worth noting. And now really is the best time to switch to a heat pump water heater. So I would, as I encourage any resident, if their water heater is getting to the near of its life, so if it's getting older, it's worth considering now switching to a heat pump water heater just because incentives combined have never been this good. And once this program runs out, it's not, guaranteed that they'll ever be this good. So this just shows what the different breakdown is. So the tech rebates, tech is a statewide program, as I mentioned. They start out at $3,100. Then we have our rebate, the Peninsula Clean Energy rebate, $2,000. The federal tax credit for a heat pump water heater is up to $2,000. It is 30% of the cost, but depending on the cost, they can qualify for up to $2,000. And then the Golden State rebate starts out at $700. So really this is, combined, it can exceed the cost of an installation. Rebate programs do cap out at 100%, as we do. So if the water heater costs less than the combined rebates, then we would reduce our rebate amount accordingly. However, the tax credit being a tax credit that you file when you do your taxes is not something that's normally taken into account. And last slide, just looking ahead for electric buildings. So although we already offer really generous incentives, both rebate and loans, to help residents electrify now, we know that that may not be enough and that there's more just support, like technical support that residents may need. So starting next year, we start offering no-cost electrification upgrades for income-qualified homeowners. How we define income qualified is those that make less than 80% of the average median income. Up until this point, before the program closed, we have only been offering one electric appliance per home, but starting next year, we will be offering whole home electrification. So as long as all their gas appliances qualify, we would switch those out for free for income qualified residents. And then in addition to that, we'll also offer more of a turnkey electrification service. So in addition to the incentives that we currently offer, we'll start to offer more of a concierge and technical support service. So if residents just don't even know where to start, they need information figuring out rebates or comparing contractor quotes or just like help with equipment selection, that's the sort of things that we can help them with. And then we'll also have a set of contractors that if they want to use our program to just get our contractors to do the work, then they can engage with us, but we'll continue to offer the rebates on their own as well. And then we'll also be launching an emergency water heater replacement service. So that's one of the biggest barriers for at least gas water heaters. Most people replace them when they break, and at that point they want to get hot water as soon as possible. So enabling a program that can quickly install a heat pump water heater, or at least a temporary replacement until a heat pump water heater can be installed, is really critical to really moving the market to everyone, not just those that replace it early. And that's pretty much it. So thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I have one qualifying question for you. I have a friend who had a HVAC, is that how you?
Yeah.
What you call it, HVAC system put into her home. And she went and called PCE and said, what about my rebate? She had never had a heating system in her home, so she was not qualified. It has to be a replacement. So you have to be going from gas to electric in order to get any of these rebates, or do some of the federal and state rebates apply?
I'll start off with our own. So with Peninsula Clean Energy rebates, the rebate is meant to help displace gas appliances. So if they didn't already have heating, they would not qualify for the rebate. However, we know not all homes have gas. So there's a lot of homes in the coast in particular that don't even have gas pipes, so they have propane. Like a home that's currently heated by propane would qualify for the rebate. We also have come across like a few corner cases, and again, like more remote areas like Woodside and stuff that have oil heating. And we've allowed that to apply too. So just fossil fuel replacements, if it's electric, if it's already electric, if all they have is electric baseboard heating, then they would not qualify.
No heating at all, they would not qualify?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know anything about the other rebates beyond PCEs?
The Tech Clean California program is also meant to help replace gas furnaces. So I know that one, if they had no heating, then that would not qualify. The federal tax credit, I'm not sure. I know that the tax credit is intended for replacements in existing homes. Like I know what doesn't qualify for sure is new construction, but I don't know if an existing home that didn't have heat would qualify. I'm not sure. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Councilmember Ruddock.
So I have an electrical water heater, electrical resistance water heater, that's close to the end of its life. Would I be able to get any kind of a rebate switching to,
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't cover that because we don't see a lot of those actually. But for electric resistance to heat pump water heater, we do have a small $500 rebate. That's not the case on the like space heating side, but for water heaters in particular, we do have that small $500 rebate, largely because it's a really big efficiency savings. So your current electric resistance water heater uses a lot of energy. Moving to a heat pump water heater, would reduce strain on the grid. So that's why we offer that small $500 rebate. So yes, but it's smaller.
Okay, thanks. Other council members? Yes, Council Member Brownstone.
Yeah, just two quick questions. So on one slide, you talked about free appliance replacement for folks who have 80% of average income. Is that what you said?
Less than 80% of the average medium income. Mm-hmm.
And what's that number?
That number varies by household size. So it's each county has their own guidelines. I think in San Mateo County, 80% for one person is about 104. Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know they're roughly this. For one person is about 104. I think for like a household of four, it's like closer to like 140, 150, around there. But yeah, they're the San Mateo County guidelines for average medium income. And we go by whatever's lowest than 80% of the average medium income, depending on household size.
And could you share this particular presentation with staff so they could send it to us?
Yeah,
because I have some other follow-up questions, but I would save them.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Rarbach.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Water heaters just die suddenly. Mm-hmm. And people panic. They need hot water immediately. This program where you can do this temporary gas replacement until you use a heat pump water heater, that's a wonderful thing, and people should be aware of it. Mm-hmm. I think you should publish it. We should publish it more so that people are aware that when their water heater goes out, there is a way to end up with a heat pump water heater. It's really important. Yeah, no, definitely. We expect that service to launch in the spring of next year. So we don't yet have it, but when we do, we'll definitely be marketing that a lot because you're right, most people replace it when it fails. So we want to make sure that people are aware of what we offer so they can, replace it with the heat pump water heater where they may not have otherwise if they just called any other plumber. Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I do look forward to seeing the slides. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor and council members.
Okay. Okay. Mayor's announcements of community activities, and I have none tonight. Report out from recent closed session meetings, our attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. There have been no recent closed session meetings, so nothing to report out.
Thank you. And now we move on to city manager updates to council.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. John Dowdy, Assistant City Manager. I have two items to discuss tonight. One, rent control, and the other, Stone Pine. Wanted to be clear, I think some of the community members were expecting an item tonight, and we apologize for any lack of clarity on our part and clarifications on that issue. We were pondering at the time in November when the council authorized staff to proceed with various ordinances that we might have to come back and ask for direction, but your direction was so clean and clear in November that we have been instead proceeding forward with ordinance development, and that is why we're not here tonight for any more details. But we wanted to give, again, an update and let the community know that we are working on this. And again, in November, your council authorized creation of a rental registration program, or at least bringing back an ordinance to consider that, creating rent control program, and enhancements to our tenant protections, and finally dealing with code enforcement related relocation assistance. So those were the package of 4 items that the council gave clear direction for us. And just as a quick note in terms of just what we're looking at schedule-wise, at least initially for the community, we are hoping to be back January 16th with a conversation regarding the rental registration. We have some models that we're looking at, and we think that we can bring forward definitely that work. And as we indicated in November, we believe this is kind of a necessary first step in terms of getting a better understanding and idea of all of the rentals in the community and locking those into what would and would not be applied with regard to both rent control and ultimately to tenant protections. And we are hoping to be able to bring back to the council and the community in March both the enhanced tenant protections and the rent control program. And then finally, trailing that would be the code enforcement related relocation assistance, probably in May of 2024. We may be able to marry those up and link those up more closely. But we heard from the community and heard from you that these were the first three were the critical pieces that you wanted us to move forward, and that's what we're trying to address schedule-wise. Stone Pine, exciting news. Last week, we received the application filing, and the request is for an emergency coastal development permit. And for those looking for the information, we hope that we've reached out to a number of folks, and we've found them through our e-news, through direct mail, email work, but they're all of the materials that we're going to look at tonight, plus gods of other materials are available at the site there noted above, and that's the project website. So tonight, I did want to just run through a little bit of what we're looking at and what this project looks like today. This looks a lot like what you might have seen in prior iterations, but I assure you that this is a significantly upgraded and modified plan. But just to be clear, we're at this point looking at a maximum of 47.
John, I apologize for interrupting, but I wonder for those that are unfamiliar with the project, if you could just do a quick synopsis of what the purpose is.
Sure.
Maybe you're already going to do that.
I was going to do that.
Okay, sorry.
I saw him waiting there. But this project includes 47 units, 46 manufactured homes, which are directly affordable units. And right now, the first 28 units are under a Joe Cerna farm worker grant program, which would be for purchase of the coaches, the units, the living units, with one manager's unit on this. To be clear, this site is the end of Stone Pine Road. This is the corporation yard for those that can see it, and I apologize, can't deal with that. But this is a portion of 880 Stone Pine property that the city owns. This application was filed jointly by the city and county to develop housing. The intention of this, at least for particularly the first 28 units, is to provide as immediate as one can get in terms of new development, housing replacement for those families displaced during the January 23rd shooting incident. This also will provide housing for other farm worker households which are being or have been or in threat of displacement due to unsafe or inappropriate living conditions. And this includes both within Half Moon Bay as well as the coastside areas. So it's a larger, broad perspective, and this is why this was a joint project by the county and the city, because the coastal area includes farm workers across boundaries of city and county areas. Again, there are a mixture. This is primarily one-bedroom units that we anticipate here. This is a mixture of primarily 2 and 3-bedroom units in what we call the southerly area of this. This is a community park area to the direct west, which provides a buffer between this property a bit and the Cypress Cove, but also provides a shared community park space between this project and particularly the Cypress Cove, but that will and is intended to be a public park available to folks not just within the residential area of this project. So it is intended to be something that the neighboring community can look at. It includes a private, basically project-based community garden and includes individual detached manufactured home units with parking and sheds for storage of materials and areas for individual garbage bins. As noted, this will include on-site management, will include on-site rules, and will include very, very strict adherence to the rules. And included in that is also intended to be addressing fire access, parking, and all the things that you might imagine within typical rules of any community, much like what CC&Rs would be for any other community of this nature. And this looks similar to what you might have seen. What you haven't seen is some of the rendering work that's been done, and this is pretty exciting work here. This would be roughly from where the gate used to be at the end of Stone Pine, looking to the east toward the corporation yard, and what you've got is the community park to the right. You've got two trails. One, the trail to the east with the children on it would extend into the park area for this project. The other is a future potential extension of the pathway, which would go to the creek trail, which is being reserved at some point through the post property, which is directly adjacent along the Pilarcitos Creek. You've got then, this is looking at the four-way intersection that was shown on the plan. To the left of this, as I'm looking at it, would be the one-bedroom community area, and to the right would be the rest of the bulk of the property. Clearly, we're looking at high visibility crossings and crosswalks and controls there for this area. This is looking to the west near the proposed community garden area, and looking toward the west and toward the park area down there. And you can see the units themselves. They are all going to be single wide units, but they all have pitched roofs. They all have brow covers over the entry points. They all will have wood deck stairs. And they all have kind of a batten board siding, enhanced siding, both vertical and horizontal options, and the color palette will be consistent with what you see in the community, and very, I think, beneficial to a quality community. And finally, this is just a visual of what that envisioned for the park area. I will note that we had received a great deal of commentary on the issue of the basketball, a proposed little half-court basketball area, which was over on the other side of the playground area. I think the neighbors will be pleased to hear that that has been removed. There is no basketball goal now on the project, so we are officially announcing that today. And in addition, there will be, with this project, traffic calming work that extends roughly from the shopping center or East Patrick Way to the boundary of the site. And we're here talking about that a little more in detail a couple of weeks ago, so I won't go into that, but just to reiterate that this continues to be part of the project and will be an enhancement that will benefit all of the businesses, residents, and other properties and that are looking in that area. So the big question here is the note that this is being requested as an emergency permit, and this is unique. It's certainly something that we had not necessarily contemplated early on, although I think everybody that was here around the January 23rd knew that this was a significant event and this was a significant issue. And as our staff, as county staff, and as our non-government organizations came to the rescue of a lot of people, that emergency and the efforts continued on and continue on today in terms of their support, our support, and our work with the affected households. And those, again, as noted, continue to increase in numbers strictly because this issue has identified a greater need. And there's a report recently was published that puts a need for farm worker housing in excess of 1,000 needed for that. So this is a big piece of that, but it is still a relatively small piece of that. 46 units when there is an overwhelming demand for far in excess of that. And so this is being looked at as an emergency beyond the January 23rd, but basically an emergency that covers all of the farm worker community extending north and south in San Mateo County. And I would say that this idea was not our brainchild, but was basically raised by a partner agency, and they have continued to express support for this approach. And I think we are appreciative of their work and efforts. We're appreciative of all of the agencies that we've worked with and are partnering with the county as well through all of this process. So what we want to say tonight with regard to this is that we are at this point basically looking to approve this as an emergency permit, and that emergency permit based on our municipal code does not require the normal public hearings or appeals. There is a process and there is an issue in terms of resolving these emergencies and these types of things. And again, this is a unique situation. We understand that. We also want to say that should there be, folks in the community that just feel that this needs to be considered at a higher level to that point, there is a dispute resolution process and procedures at the California Coastal Commission that is available to them, and we will certainly make that information available and continue to do so. And every bit of information that we've transferred out and transmitted to folks as of this week includes the provisions that does exist. We are hopeful that the community will not choose that option, but we want to make sure that they know that it does exist. And but any actions that are taken in terms of this will slow down the process. And at this point, our best hope would be to have occupancy sometime in late fall of next year would be the earliest that we could see movement with that. And anything that slows down bidding processes will affect that timing. Finally, as noted, we are looking at this application. We are trying to make sure that we are justifying the actions that we are contemplating taking. We will, based on emergency permitting process, require a follow-up CDP, Coastal Development Permit, and that is required to be filed within 60 days of issuance of the emergency permit, and we are working toward that. That process will include a full California Environmental Quality Act review, although much of that work has already been completed, both as part of this project and as part of the city's corporation yard. And finally, San Mateo County will finalize bid documents. A lot will depend on where Brian Garcia, how right he is about the weather. A lot will depend on the perspective of where any residents and where their desires are to take up to the Coastal Commission and ask for their consideration in the process. So there's a lot of ifs and ands and buts there a bit, but all things, working in to our favor, we could have people living, farm worker households living out there by the fall of 2024.
Excellent, thank you, John. Can you do me a favor and the audience to just name the 2 grants that we've received, the CERNA and the Zuckerberg grants? Just call them out so that people are aware that we are being helped not just by the county but by...
Sure. We received notice several months ago that that the county, and these are both the county of San Mateo is the recipient too, but the Joe CERNA was about 2.8 million. It's been so long since I've looked at it. I'm looking for the boss.
I think it's 5 million.
5 million.
Yeah.
28 houses, $5 million. You're right. Toward the purchase of the coaches, the units themselves, installation, and transportation and everything to that point. And that's $5 million plus obviously the loan packages that go along with that 28, the first 28 units. And then the Chan Zuckerberg initiative, $1 million recently is awarded to the county, again, for this project. And then there's other, we're looking everywhere for additional philanthropic giving, and that continues the effort, and so we'll work from there. I apologize. It's been a little focused on the nitty-gritty of the project itself.
No, it's great. It's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Council, any clarifying questions?
I have a softball. What's the name of the project?
It is right now we're referring to it as Stone Pine Cove. I think we're still in a point where that's negotiable. We'll sort of better evaluate that, but we wanted to give it a name that we would all reference to rather than 880 Stone Pine. So, hi.
Thank you. Councilmember Brownstone.
One other thing worth mentioning, even though we all might know it up here, but this whole project is, it's a county project. They're getting it funded. They're supervising a lot of this. It's not Half Moon Bay. Sometimes people think, why are you doing such an expensive project when there's all these other things? And there are great grants, but it's not coming out of Half Moon Bay. This is the county's project. So I think that's a good umbrella to always begin with, so people know that.
Just to be clear, we are co-applicants on the coastal development permit, but the county has basically committed and put forth the project and will be managing and operating this. And the intention is to ultimately for them to own the property at the end of this process.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Jimenez.
I just have to say, kind of brought a tear to my eye to see those images, on our presentation. Something that we've been looking forward to, for several years, and now it is unfortunate, that it took a tragedy, but, to see those images of the new, I guess a new community, in Half Moon Bay. It's, I want to, thank you, thank the staff for all the hard work that is going into this. I know it has not been easy, but I know many others, feel the same way that I felt, when I saw those images. So thank you.
Okay, I think we'll move on to public forum. I have several speakers for public forum, and we would like you to speak on topics that are not on the agenda. The first speaker is Rupi Singh.
Is this on? Okay. All right. Thank you. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members, thank you for indulging me today. This should be quick. I live on 3rd Avenue in the, I even forget the name of my neighborhood, but here we are, Arleta Park. So, and my neighbor, I'm on 735 3rd Avenue. Both my neighbor and I are here today to express our concern about what appears to be an encroachment on the Myrtle Street right-of-way by a local resident, not once but twice. So the right-of-way, which is kind of like a mud path running west from 1 right up to 3rd Avenue, is basically a floodway, I would say, because in the winters, especially this last winter when we had a lot of rain, there was a lot of water coming down because the grading of the road is such that on the west side of Highway 1, our homes are at a significantly lower level than the street.
Rupi, I apologize. Can you speak a little closer to the mic? Folks are having trouble hearing you.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry? I don't. Okay. Is this better? Okay. All right. So, do you want me to repeat what I said, or can I move forward? Anyhow, quickly. So, the Myrtle Street right-of-way running west from Highway 1 onto 3rd Avenue. The grading of the road and 3rd Avenue is such that it's at a significantly lower level than Highway 1, so rainwater tends to come pouring down that street. The home at 508 Myrtle has twice extended their fence northwards. I mean, again, I'm not an engineer, but I'd say probably about 20 feet, 20 linear feet northwards and into the right-of-way, which has reduced the right-of-way to about half of what it used to be when I first moved here. That is causing problems, and Marty will elaborate on that further, because if we have another wet winter, his backyard is going to get flooded, as it did last year, and since I'm next door, the odds are mine will as well. So I hope that the city will take this matter seriously, first and foremost because somebody has basically encroached on land that does not belong to them. That in itself is, in my mind, a huge problem. The second is that if we let this go, I can predict that other people will start doing the same. Where does this end? Why should somebody be allowed to annex public land for their own private purposes? And you know, as I drive past, I can see that they now have 2 Airstream trailers sitting in there, which I believe, I don't have evidence myself, but I've heard from others, that those are now listed on Airbnb. Again, not following city rules. So I'm hoping that this at some point becomes priority, because, and I don't mean this in a threatening manner, but should there be flooding in the winters, in my backyard, I'm going to be coming after the city, because the city is the one that has not done anything to assert its rights over that piece of land. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupi. Next, we have Margie Van Doon. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Marty?
That's as good as it gets. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I live on 3rd Avenue, as Rupi said. I'm a neighbor. My property backs up to Highway 1. And it is adjacent to a city lot, basically the old Myrtle Avenue right-of-way, that acts as a drainage corridor. Sheet flow drainage comes off of Highway 1 and off of the east side of Myrtle through a pipe under Highway 1 across this property and on to 3rd Avenue. And then the flow of the water crosses in front of my property and then ends up in a designated storm drain. The difficulty here is that the property that we're talking about is vacant, it's unimproved. It acts as ad hoc access to the Naomi Partridge Trail, and it's used by the public in the neighborhood pretty regularly. It's about 40 feet wide, and my issue here is that the neighbor that abuts this right away to the south has basically moved their property fence, a property line fence that existed when they bought the property a couple of years ago. And they've taken that fence and moved it at least 20 feet into the city's property. So basically, they've taken well over 2,000 square feet of city property for their private use. I find this sort of a mystery. This has gone on for over a year. This didn't happen yesterday. This isn't recent. This has been going on. Now, what they've put on this property over time has been a series of travel trailers and other trailers, and it currently, on city property, holds 2 Airstream trailers, which up until a couple of months ago were listed as Airbnb rentals. So the city de facto is the owner and tenant of Airbnb rental units. Now, as I understand it, the city has now gone in and tried to enforce the requirements, cease the activities, take back the land, and basically require the property owner to move the fence back to their property line. The property owner has objected. As I understand it, they have filed suit against the city. How they can do that, I don't understand it. You own the property. You have given them no approvals, permits, or legal rights to encroach on that property or to use the property, specifically use it for sub-rentals for which they pay no taxes on and for which the property, incidentally, is non-taxable. It's public property. It's not subject to property tax. So this benefit to this single property owner, I find objectionable. What I also find objectionable is the use of this property for their private activity to the expense of the public's access. This is a drainage corridor. Water runs through there. It flooded several times last year. In turn, my property adjacent got flooded. So maybe I'm going over my 3 minutes, but the point is, take the fence down. I don't understand what all this litigation is. You own the property, you can have the fence removed. So now we're in litigation. It's gonna rain here in a couple of weeks. The floods are gonna start again, I'm assuming. We have a fence that basically obstructs the ability to get in there and do any maintenance, any emergency access.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. I'm
Appreciate
sorry for going over my
That's all right.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Rocio Avila.
Madam Mayor, can we just provide a quick response? I think it's important. Thank you. Catherine Engberg, our city attorney, will provide that response.
Thank you. I'll just briefly note that as the speaker indicated, there is an active code enforcement action going on this property, and I will make sure that I believe our code compliance officer is aware of the details that were mentioned tonight, but I will make him aware that there were 2 speakers so that he can watch the video. And I also just wanted to note that I'm not aware of any any litigation that's been filed against the city on this item. We have not been served with any litigation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next we have Rocio Avila.
Hola, buenas noches. Perdón. Miembros del concilio y personas que me escuchan. Mi nombre es Rocío Ávila, miembro del Comité de Viviendas de Alas. Por ya cerca de 2 años que empezó este Comité de Viviendas, hemos estado pidiendo, abogando por una vivienda justa y asequible para nuestras familias aquí en Half Moon Bay, convocando a la comunidad a hacer marchas cada cuarto viernes del mes, en las juntas del concilio, primero por Zoom y ahora en persona, también en juntas del condado de San Mateo, donde la comunidad hemos estado presentes, expresando nuestras necesidades y contando nuestras historias de lo que hemos sufrido y seguimos sufriendo por falta de una vivienda. Las historias de muchas personas, el mirar a nuestros hijos crecer y estar en el mismo lugar, hace que nuestra lucha siga, que no nos desanímenos, que haciendo que nuestra voz se escuche, no solo aquí, sino en otros lugares donde nos puedan escuchar y donde nos puedan ayudar a poder hacer realidad el sueño de muchas familias. El tener una vivienda justa y asequible hace asequible a nuestros ingresos. Cuando he estado platicando con familias y me empiezan a contar sus situaciones de vivienda, créanme que me duele y me pongo a pensar, yo tengo la dicha de que mis hijos puedan salir a la sala, de que mis hijos puedan salir a la cocina sin que nadie se los prohíba, de poder sentirse libres y de saber que hay personas viviendo en un solo cuarto con sus hijos y que cuando descansan ellos tienen que salir de su casa para poder cansar a sus hijos y que cuando lleguen ellos ya no quieran salir del cuarto. Estas son una de muchas situaciones que pasan nuestras familias aquí. Muchas personas no lo saben y desconocen lo que la gente tiene que aguantar por tener un cuarto donde dormir, por falta de una vivienda. Un día un señor me dijo, ¿por qué no te buscas un trabajo y te pones a trabajar y dejas de andar haciendo eso de las viviendas? Porque eso nunca va a pasar aquí. Por años han estado pidiendo viviendas y nunca han dejado hacer. No pierdas tu tiempo, le contesté. Pero no hay que perder la fe, tenemos que unirnos a hablar de las necesidades que tenemos aquí y el día que se hagan viviendas voy a venir aquí con usted y le voy a decir que juntos podemos hacer que las cosas se logren. Gracias.
Good evening, council members and people that are listening to me right now. My name is Rocio Avila. I am a member of the Housing Committee for ALAS, and for almost 2 years that I've been with this committee on housing, we have been fighting for and asking for a just living and affordable living for our families here in Half Moon Bay. We've been asking the community to go on different marches every fourth Friday of the month. On these marches or meetings, on the council member meetings, we first started with Zoom, and now we're here in person. And we've also been to some meetings for the County of San Mateo, where the community has been present there expressing our needs and telling our stories of all of the suffering that we've been through and suffering that we continue to go through because we don't have living arrangements. So the stories of many people, and to look at some of our kids grow up and being in the same space is something that we continue to struggle with, and it's something that kind of makes you lose motivation. And so we want to have our voice heard, not just here, but in other places where they can really hear us and where they can help us make this dream a reality for many families. To have just housing and affordable housing depending on our income. When I've talked to different families and they begin to tell me their situations, their living situations, believe me, it hurts me. And I start to think that I actually, that they have to actually leave their living room and to tell their kids that they can't even go out to the kitchen per se, and they cannot feel like they're free in their own home. And to know that people living for over 15 years in one room with their two kids, and that when they would have to, when they wanted to rest, they had to send them outside so that they can have some moment at home to rest. And whenever they would come home tired, they would have to share that one single room. So these are many of the situations that a lot of families go through. A lot of people don't know this, but they have to kind of live with it, this living arrangement in a single room, because they don't have housing. There was this one day, this man told me, goes, why don't you go and find a job and start working, and just leave that housing, business alone. Why don't you? Because that housing situation is never going to happen here. It's been years that people have been asking for the same thing, housing, and it's just not going to happen. So just kind of let it go. And I answered, we can't lose faith. We have to unite. We have to talk about our necessities. And one of these days, we will have housing. I'm going to actually come here with you all, and I'm going to let you know that we can do these things. So this motivates me to continue on and not give up the fight so that we can all have that right to for housing. And it doesn't matter what race, what color, or if you have, no, we all have the right for a dignified housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosia. Next, we have Sheila Edwards-May.
Madam Mayor, council members, neighbors, I did not attend a meeting that was scheduled for the 30th to discuss the minimum wage situation in Half Moon Bay. The flyer that came out didn't say where the meeting was going to be, and at the last minute I realized that and missed it. So I'm here today just to put in my 10 cents worth on this topic. While obviously there is a need for a working wage for people who need to pay rent and live in our community, my point that I'm bringing tonight is that of the high schoolers. Having had a business on Main Street for 33 years now, over those years I have hired many, many wonderful high schoolers and trained them for their next job. I feel that to group them with the need of the, say, slightly older community members for whom the needs might be slightly different, because in general, high school students are still living at home. And it is for this reason that I think that we should adopt a two-tier system that would at least be palliative to the fact that we're taking in employees who've never worked before and who we have to shape for their future and next jobs and going off to college and so on. For this, I would like the city to consider, as I say, a two-tier system that would, because we've fairly recently increased the minimum from what it was to what it is now, and to make another jump relatively soon after the last increase is just a little bit tight. Respectfully, in the amount of hours and the dollars per hour, it shouldn't affect a successful business, and you know, it wouldn't put me under. But I speak for myself and for other businesses that may be, you know, growing in an earlier stage than mine and would feel the pinch from this, quite possibly. I'm sorry I missed the meeting on the 30th. I'm glad you allowed me an opportunity to speak right now, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sheila. Before we go on to Zoom, I'd like to make a statement. We welcome speakers providing public comment at every single City Council meeting. But please be advised, this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item. And if speaking during general public comment, they must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended. Thank you. And now, Jessica, we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Carlisle Ann Young.
Oh, thank you. Actually, I don't really have any agenda topics specifically, but a couple things. This would be more like a scam alert. A friend of mine got a Don Horsley friend request today. So I hate to say it, but there's scammers out there everywhere, and not everyone knows he passed away, I suppose, but he'd already received 2 friends. So I think, you know, it's important to put that word out there. And then the other thing was, I did kind of want to, I'm so happy that they're going to make room for some of the farm workers that have been struggling for so long. But we didn't ask for questions under Stone Pine Cove. So I'm going to just put this out there. And if you feel like answering it, I'm probably not the only one that noticed that they didn't show where the parking was going to be. Is it going to be on the site next to the unit? Is it going to be a carport or just a driveway or a separate parking area? I saw a couple parking spaces that looked like they were going to be paved. And then also, is it going to be permeable pavement to soak up, let the groundwater percolate down? So that was one. And then the last question I wanted to know is if those are all going to be rentals or all for ownership or a mixture of both. But they didn't mention that when they were talking, and then they didn't ask any questions then. So I was happy to see that they were going to let some of the farm workers in. I guess my last question, that had they asked us any, would have been if these are going to only be for farm workers. It sounded as though they were only going to be for farm workers. And I know originally Moonridge said it was for farm workers, but now a lot of other non-farm workers are residing there. So that sort of maybe displaced some of the farm workers by allowing in the essential workers, et cetera. Anyway, the last question I had, which I don't know, you probably can't answer it, but I watched the video, didn't attend live, but I watched your last meeting video of November 7th, and I thought you said the sheriff was going to be here to talk about the automatic license plate readers. So did that just fall through the cracks, or is that pushed off to another meeting, or did I miss a meeting somehow? Thanks.
Thank you, Sid. We are not here to answer questions. Our city manager will respond to the first question only, and that is about parking at Stone Pine. Otherwise, you can go on the website and get the rest of the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Young. There's a couple of different approaches being taken to parking here because it wasn't clear in the pictures, but there will be no on-street parking as part of this development. The constraints of the size don't allow for on-street parking and allow safe access for fire and emergencies. So each of the units will have 2 tandem off-street parking spaces, and then near the community garden area and near the park area there will be additional public and overflow parking, and the use of that remains to be determined based on the needs of the community, and then will be included in the rules and regulations of the neighborhood. And then, Ms. Young, I'm happy to reach out to you and have a deeper conversation about some of the other questions. We'd be happy to answer those after the meeting. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joanne Rokoski.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Rokoski, and I'm a member of Coastside Faith in Action and the Unitarian Universalist Coastside community. Just a couple moments ago, Rocio spoke eloquently, and I want to reiterate my support for the things she said. In the context of PICO, which is the statewide organization to which a Faith in Action Bay Area belongs, and this is their statement that they released last spring. We believe home is a sacred right. Every family deserves a safe, secure home without fear of unjust eviction or excessive rent increases. Well, tonight I'm speaking to you in appreciation for the many actions you have been taking in 2023 on behalf of all those in Half Moon Bay who are struggling to economically survive in this high-cost region. You are putting into action those beliefs. You've committed to substantial development of low-income housing in the Half Moon Bay housing element. You've important projects in the planning, as just discussed at Stone Pine, but also at 555 Kelly. And you are beginning, as discussed earlier, to prepare a tenant protection plan for renters. And you have a preliminary plan to increase the minimum wage to $20 an hour. So tonight, I am not speaking to you to ask for more, although I undoubtedly will in the future. Instead, tonight, I just want to thank you for your vision and your commitment to serving those residents of the community who are at the lowest economic margins. I think the commitment and actions of Half Moon Bay can serve as a model to other communities in our county. As again, thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Next speaker is Judy Stroyer.
Yeah, this is public comment for non-agenda items, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I would like to speak about some free speech issues. This is something that's a problem for our country right now because we have the Anti-Defamation League sending leaflets and directions out to the city council.
Please silence the speaker.
Next speaker is William Cooper.
Yeah, good evening, City Council. Excuse me. First, I'd like to touch on what the Spanish speaker talked about. I would just like to say this country is for white people. Fuck off and go.
Paul Kurzberg.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I'd caution you on cutting people off.
Richard.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. How many Jews' dicks do you see?
TND Enjoyer.
Hey, how's it going? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I fucking hate.
Madam Mayor, I recommend we end public comment at this point.
Could we please end all public comment? Thank you. And thank the members of the public responsible and good citizens who want to speak, run our city the way it should be run, and the rest of you, don't come back. Thank you. We now move on to consent calendar. Does anyone on council wish to pull anything? May I have a motion then?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the consent calendar, including the following items. Items 1A, waive readings of resolutions and ordinances. Item 1B, Mayor's amended list of City Council representatives and designated assignments for 2023. Item 1C, 2024 residential dwelling unit allocation pursuant to Half Moon Bay Municipal Code, Chapter 17.06, also known as Measure D. Item 1D, Ocean Colony Sewer Station Backup Pump Purchase. Item 1E, final acceptance of the Seymour Outfall Emergency Repairs. Is that it? Oops, sorry. Item 1F, Cal Recycle Grant and Payment Programs. Item 1G, Smithfield Park Improvement Project, Amendment Number 3 to Professional Services Agreement with Fryer and Loretta, Inc. for additional design support. That's it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Please be back at no later than 20 of 9. Thank you. Ordinances and public hearings, and I don't believe there are any. None. So we move on to item 3A, Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Phase 1 Adoption.
Mayor Penrose, if I could make an announcement real quick for our public members on Zoom. We will no longer be accepting comments over Zoom for the remainder of this meeting. If you do have any comments on the rest of the items, you're welcome to email them to me. My email is jblair, B-L-A-I-R, at hmbcity.com, and I will read them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council and the public. My name is Miles Bozerguinia, Public Works Director and City Engineer. I'm happy to be here tonight. I am going to be presenting this item, although I have not had as much to do with this particular plan. That a lot of that goes to Veronica Vostenak, who has been our programs manager for Public Works and has been working tirelessly on a lot of our sustainability efforts. She's also available on Zoom for any questions, but I'm happy to start the presentation. So tonight we're here to formally adopt the Phase 1 of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. This effort has been ongoing for a number of years. We started in 2019 with a lot of capacity building and outreach, especially with communities that are generally underrepresented. In 2020, we continued our outreach with the general public, as well as a lot of our nonprofits and community-based organizations and partners. And then continued that effort through 2022, where we started getting more invested and detailed in this action, the Climate Action Adaptation Plan itself. The public draft of this document has been out was in circulation for a number of months, from December of last year to August of this year, and there was a update on it on October 17th. The purpose of this of our plan is multifaceted. It's a scientific and regulatory context of all of the changes and policies and programs related to climate change and impacts from greenhouse gas emissions. There's a huge effort on the inventory on greenhouse gas emissions with respect to the progress that we've made so far on those things, as well as looking at where we can implement some of those, as well as looking at the different specific areas where we can look at getting that information. It's challenging from that perspective. A lot of this data is confidential, so it's subject to certain requirements. So we get data dumps, but aren't able to do a lot of the piecing of these things together. And then, and of course, there's also the roadmap to achieve our emissions reductions, which is the main goal. And there's two main components. One is the community-based, which is what can be done outside of our municipal services. This is electrification. This is phasing out of gas appliances, things of that nature. And then you have on the municipal side, it's our own facilities, it's our own operations, and how we work on certain areas. So a little recap, greenhouse gas emission goals. There were a number of assembly bills and Senate bills that started this. AB 32 in 2006, which was the requirement for 20% reductions of greenhouse gas emissions from the levels in 1990. Then in 2016, there was the passing of SB 32 with a 40% reduction goal of those greenhouse gas emissions from the same 1990 levels by 2030. And then AB 1279, which is the carbon neutrality goal by 2045. The 2019 inventory of our greenhouse gas emissions is shown here in this chart and this pie chart. As you can see, 61% is the majority of it is transportation related, as far as the amount of emissions that we still have in our inventory. Then the second grouping is building natural gas in buildings of 25%. And solid waste contributes 9%. Building electricity about 4%, and then there's wastewater and water that are minor with respect to the other items. Some of the strategies that are outlined in our in the Phase 1 Climate Action and Adaptation Plan before you tonight are, again, focusing on some of those main categories. Obviously, transportation, with looking in some of the main areas is really how can we reduce the amount of single occupancy vehicles and the number of trips that those take. Looking at carpooling, looking at ride shares, things of that nature. And then, of course, supporting our increased zero emissions, emission vehicle adoption. So looking at ways to get cleaner vehicles in the area, making it easier for folks to find access to charging stations, things of that nature. There's also the building energy side, which is that's a little bit more commonly known. We've talked a little bit more about that in detail, which is the building electrification, and this is looking at all different types, all sectors and all building types. And then on the solid waste side, we look more specifically at diversion, reducing the amount of materials that goes into our landfills, and a big part of that is generating less waste, which is one area which would be using reusables over disposables, even compostable disposables. And then there's other ones where there's other strategies that are outlined in the plan as well. The reduction of water consumption does help with greenhouse gas emissions. We are looking at opportunities to work with the Resource Conservation District on carbon sequestration, and then looking at supporting businesses that want to become certified green businesses. There's a standard process that businesses can go through, and we can help provide those supports to help them turn their business and become as greenhouse gas emission friendly as possible. A lot of the municipal measures are focused on electrifying all of our municipal facilities. There are still a handful of areas where we are looking at finalizing our transition to all electric municipal facilities, and there'll be items that will be coming up in the next city council meeting next year. We're also looking at increasing our zero emission vehicle adoption. We started that process with the first city pickup truck that was all electric. We were able to receive our Ford Lightning about a month and a half ago. So that's one of the transitions we started making. And then again, looking at increasing our diversion programs for waste, trying to get things into compost and reusables, and reduce the amount of materials that go in the landfill. And then, of course, leveraging our grant funding and looking at, whether that's in the municipal facilities, looking at opportunities to maximize grant funding towards those projects and programs, as well as others that become available. So as from there was a few minor edits from the draft that was presented on the 17th of October. And the strategies, again, largely remain the same. There was an increased emphasis on a few things coming out of this. Bless you. And a lot of that was the increased emphasis on outreach, education, and collaboration. I think we heard the council and the community clear at the October meeting that these changes are going to take time. You're changing the way people have lived historically, and those types of changes require additional support, help, outreach, education, and so we're going to continue those efforts. As well as advocating for additional financial incentives for our community members. I think tonight's presentation by PC staff was perfect timing for this item. And again, things working with those partnerships through PC and others, I think are going to be critical for us to continue striving towards those goals. So again, tonight we're here to answer any questions. Veronica Vosnek is available for any specific questions as well. This was a much higher level overview of our plan, given we did a more robust in October. But again, if there's any questions on any of the areas, any of the programs and policies, we're here and happy to answer. Thank you.
Council, any questions?
No questions, just really appreciate the multi-pronged approach of the work and looking at a number of different strategies. So appreciate that.
I just want to reiterate what Robert said. I think the multi-pronged approach is absolutely the only way to go. We're going to have to piece this together. I do believe, and I think Harvey agrees with me, that dealing with climate change and global warming is the #1 issue of our time. And it should be for each and every one of us in our city. And I'm very happy with the work that staff has done. Appreciate it. Sorry to see Veronica to go. But again, thank you to staff for all the hard work.
I just am thankful for the work that staff has done. It's really, as Debbie just said, it's the #1 issue in this world, and if we don't address it, we're doomed. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to reach out and just say a special thanks to Veronica Vosniak, because the work that she did on this has been incredible. It's been years in the coming, and she has put her heart and soul into it. And I also want to thank staff for understanding that community outreach and education are going to be critical if we expect people to change the way they behave to reduce the effects of climate change. It's not going to be easy for any of us. We all have to join in together, and staff understands that and understands the importance of community involvement in the process. So thank you. Okay, do we now need a motion?
I don't believe we have any public comment, but we should probably just check, as you mentioned, or
Thank you.
online. But
Yeah. I don't see any hands raised, so.
Okay. I move that we adopt the Half Moon Bay Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Phase 1.
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Councilmember Rohrbach?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Mayor Penrose?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We now move on to item 3B. And this is a discussion of the Black Lives Matter City Hall mural. We have several speakers. Maybe we should hear from public speaking first. I'd like to do that.
The staff might want to brief staff report first? Or?
No, I'd like to do the public forum first. And then we can do staff report. And we are limiting public forum to emails that have been sent to Jessica Blair, our city clerk, or to people who are here in person to speak. So we'll start with those that are here first, and that's the first is Paul Grigoriev.
How's that? Yeah, that sounds good. Good evening. I have a few remarks about the BLM mural matter. My name is Paul Grigoriev, and I'm a proud resident of the city of Half Moon Bay. I'm proud of our city for many reasons, including our commitment to a decent minimum wage for those who work here, our continuing efforts to provide affordable housing for those who want to live here, our ongoing support for programs that seek increases in employment and economic opportunity for our lower income residents, including our farm workers, and above all, our overarching dedication to what tonight's staff report calls, quote, the highest standards of equity and justice for, quote, all members of our community, unquote. And I believe that all of us here tonight should clearly understand that the Black Lives Matter mural is a symbol of that later point, the equity and justice for all, and our basic rights to as human beings, rights which, God willing, are not temporary, and we should always celebrate, and that should never be abridged or forgotten. In conclusion, I believe that the council got it right the first time when you approved the mural and supported the principles for which it stands. You should proudly continue to do so without diminishing the strength of its message. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we have Mariah Grigoriev.
Good evening. I'm Mariah Grigoriev and live in Half Moon Bay. Until yesterday, I had never noticed the Black Lives Matters mural. It is painted very high up, it's small, and it consists of only 3 words. Your 2020 resolution that authorized the mural states that the council forever stands against racism, discrimination, and police violence. The council has shown its commitment and taken steps to raise the minimum wage, increase the supply of affordable housing, and support economic and racial justice. Your work, though, is not temporary, nor is it complete. A few years ago, Stanford studied school systems across the country and found that our school system, CUSD, had the largest learning gap between white and Latino students, and also we had the largest proportional income gap between white and Latino families. The disruption of COVID has only increased the problem. This is not the time to make a decision, to take an action to remove the mural. I believe there may be a broader, more inclusive message that is appropriate for our city. One idea is to sponsor a contest to select a new mural that expresses your commitment to equity and justice. But don't allow the existing mural to be erased until you have a replacement. Please don't be responsible for painting over a message we all believe in and leave a blank wall behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah. Next, we have Paulette Eisen.
I actually like Mariah's idea, actually. In these divided and tense times, I was heartened by our Night of Lights parade this past Friday. The community gathered to cheer on all the organizations and groups that represent Half Moon Bay. No politics were involved. No heavy-handed messages were involved. It was a celebration of everybody who is here in this town. I thought, it looked like half the town was in the parade, but then the other half of the town was actually there out in the streets. I mean, it was really a wonderful, wonderful event. And it just cheered me up, given how difficult the times are. I think we need to do more things like that to bring our community together. And I like Mariah's idea of having a different way to approach and take the Black Lives Matter sign down and still represent what we really want to see in this community, which is cohesion, which is unity, which is the strength of all the different people that make up our community. That's what I would like to see, because at this point, Black Lives Matter means not what it meant to many people in 2020. And their members have said things recently that is especially hurtful when it comes to anti-Semitism, and their support of the Hamas terrorists, not all of them, but certain chapters of Black Lives Matter have definitely come out in full support of what happened on October 7th. And that is very hurtful to see that sign and to think about what it means to a lot of people now. It's not what it meant in 2020. And that's why I would like to see something replace that to reflect the unity and strength of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette.
I do have a few emails, but we also, David Oblovi and his son have arrived for in-person comments.
Okay, so that's fine. David.
So this is my son, Juna. Juna was planning to make this comment from home. So I'm going to make his comment, and then I'm going to make my comment. So hello, my name is Juna. I am a resident of Half Moon Bay, and I would just like to make a quick statement on why I strongly feel that the Black Lives Matter mural on the City Hall building should not be removed. You sure you don't want to do this? You sure? Okay. The black and yellow mural displays nothing but a positive message that has no negative connotation or hateful meaning of any kind that would warrant its removal. Many black people are often treated unfairly in different ways throughout their day-to-day lives. Whether or not you agree with that statement does not change the fact that the mural has a supporting positive message that is a small step towards making an at-risk minority population feel more welcome and equal in society. Furthermore, the sign provides no implication that it is associated with any other movements or protest groups that some HMB residents might have a problem with, and is simply a reminder to everyone that we should all be treated with respect and equality. When the City Council approved the mural in 2020, I was filled with hope at a time when our country and the world felt somewhat hopeless. To stand here now and plead for it to remain causes me to feel like we are To stand here now and plead for it to remain causes me to feel like we are going backwards. For those simple reasons, I think the city of Half Moon Bay should not remove the Black Lives Matter mural. That is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Juno.
Do you want to stay or do you? No, you can stay. I just don't want you to be harmed. Okay. All right. Wow, what an interesting night. My name is David Ablovi, as you all know pretty well, and as far as I know, I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay. The non-resident of Half Moon Bay who wrote the misguided email that prompted Councilmember Ruddick to bring this item to tonight's agenda wants you to remove the BLM mural because the concept that Black Lives Matter is political in nature and is an affront to his personal beliefs. Thus, the idea that the city supports this simple statement of basic human decency is deeply offensive to him. Quick edit here, as it is to the male speakers during public comment who declared that this country is for whites. It was exactly this type of bigotry and outright denial of reality that the city took a courageous stand against when 4 of you commissioned the mural in late summer 2020. To destroy the mural now in a latent attempt to placate the few among us who would continue the inequities of our nation in perpetuity if they could, would be to transmogrify the courage you showed then into the shame of your tacit approval of the status quo. It takes courage to stand up to the people who would say the things we all heard a few minutes ago, that our community needs you to do that now. Perhaps you say to yourselves, well, things are better now, so we don't really need to support this simple concept the way we did in 2020. Yet, in the United States today, 1 out of every 3 black children lives in poverty, compared to 1 out of every 11 white children. 81% of poor black children attend high poverty schools, which it could be argued is just because poor kids go to high poverty schools, except they don't. Only 52% of poor white kids go to high poverty schools. In the United States, 1 black person out of every 11 is either incarcerated or on probation. 1 of 45 white people are in the same circumstance. And sadly, it remains the case that black males are 2.5 times more likely today still to be killed by the police over the course of their lifetime than are white males. Each of those statistics is a stark example of the rampant inequity that faced black communities throughout the United States when you commissioned the mural in 2020, and each is equally valid today. The message that the mural transmits to everyone who sees it, from the centerpiece of our political, governmental, and social power structure in Half Moon Bay, is that we see you, we understand, and we will not stop working tirelessly until racial equity is not just a dream. That is why I'm asking you to renew the temporary installation for another 3 years with a firm date set in 2026 to reconvene and review and decide, are we there yet? And if we're not there, to renew it for another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
That's not what I wrote. Nope.
And Jessica, you have some emails that you've received?
Yes, I have 5. And I'll read them in the order they were received. The first is from Lauren Wilson. Hi, I would like to express my support of keeping the BLM mural. I spoke in support in 2020 and continue to support this mural. The mural joins not only Half Moon Bay residents, but the many tourists and visitors of HMB in affirming Black Lives Matter. This mural not only seeks to honor the Black Lives Matter movement, but also shows the support of the City Council on Black lives, systemic change, and racial justice. Thank you very much. The next is from Aisha Barrow from CFTA. On behalf of CFTA Council, we need to keep the BLM mural in the city of Half Moon Bay. The racist comments we heard earlier tonight on this call are exactly why. There is a lot of hate and misinformation. The Black Lives mural was created out of peace and allyship as a recognition of the suffering Black people went through after the George Floyd murder and go through every day. This was an important act from the Half Moon Bay City Council, one that showed love and empathy and symbolized inclusion, not just at this moment in time, but for good. I am asking the City Council to continue this symbolism. More than ever, we need it, and we cannot let a few loud and misinformed voices destroy the legacy of love created through this mural. Please keep it as a commitment to continue to do the hard work and provide allyship to all marginalized communities. Thank you. From Kate Broderick, HMB City Council, please consider keeping the BLM mural. The message is just as important as it was in 2020. As a society, we have barely made any strides with systemic racism that hurts Black people the most. Removal of such a mural sends the message that HMB and the surrounding coastside doesn't believe that Black lives matter. Please don't do this. Instead, consider adding more message of peace and racial and social justice to the building so that HMB City is seen as a place that believes in equality. I read that one already. From Allison Little. I'm writing about item 3B on the agenda regarding the potential removal of the BLM mural. I completely agree with some of the opinions expressed about the need to recognize our marginalized communities in Half Moon Bay, and I sincerely support other murals and public statements to this end. But this should not take away from the importance of celebrating Black lives, specifically, and the importance of the national Black Lives Matter movement. I understand that there is some controversy around purported statements one chapter member may have made online. The statements of this member do not represent the Black Lives Matter movement nationally and certainly should not take away from the City of Half Moon Bay's explicit support for Black lives. Support for Black lives deserves its own mural. I'm sure you are aware that in our county, Black people are 9 times more likely to be arrested than white people. In San Mateo and 5 surrounding counties, Black individuals are 27% of those killed by law enforcement, despite making up 7% of the population. Black individuals face unbelievable discrimination in most areas of life. Please let's show our support for Black lives with this mural. Thank you. And from Sue Hankin-Haas, I support keeping the BLM mural. The BLM sign signifies HMB's commitment to protection of civil rights for all citizens. Especially now with so much hate, HMB should continue to take a strong stand for equity and justice. Thank you. I have no other emails.
Thank you. And I appreciate staff allowing us to do the public forum first. Can we now have a staff report?
Sure, and I'll keep it brief. I think the details were in the staff report. But just a reminder to everybody, in August of 2020, the City Council passed a resolution supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, which has existed since 2013 and was growing exponentially at that time due to the events that took place during that summer. Among other things, the resolution stated that our City Council joins our residents and neighbors in affirming Black Lives Matter and stands in solidarity with communities of color, affirms the inherent dignity of all community members and holds ourselves to the highest standards of equity and justice, and seeks to honor the Black Lives Matter movement through the installation of a temporary public mural in the City Hall parking lot as an expression of the City Council's support for Black lives, systemic change, and racial justice. I will note that the original plan for this mural was to paint it on the parking lot itself, and part of the temporary nature of it was the fact that parking lots are resurfaced somewhat frequently, and we expected it to remain for 2 to 3 years. Ultimately, the decision was made to put it on the site of City Hall, and with the clear choice to make it more visible to the community. But that work was not intended to change the spirit of what the council directed, which was a temporary mural. The temporary nature was to allow our community to view it and provide feedback and allow the council to make decisions on the future disposition of it. I will share that the city adopted a public art policy in August of 2021, obviously after this mural was placed. And so the placement of this mural took place under different conditions than any murals that we've done since then and in the future. With that, we're able to answer any questions about options for that we've heard from the community and from others about what we could do with the mural. And we're happy to take any of those questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from council now. Councilmember Rarbach.
Matthew, when I'm one-on-one with you, you talked about another place where a larger mural on Kelly could exist. Could you talk about that?
Sure. I think one of the things we've been talking about that really ties into some of the comments we've heard more recently and even tonight is going back to our priority setting from earlier this year. Councilmember Jimenez had talked about honoring the heritage of our community and all the different cultures that represent our community, possibly through a mural and some other events and activities. Based on that, we did some outreach to the building owner at the corner of Parisma and Main. It's where the Thai restaurant is and now the dollar store. There's a very prominent wall that runs east to west on Kelly Avenue, and the owner of the building is open to a discussion of such a mural. And so that was something that we had offered as an alternative based on what we had heard from the community, that if the choice was to move forward with maybe continuing the spirit but doing something different, that could be a really prominent location to do that work. Part of that is also related to the future plans for the City Hall parking lot. If we go back about a year and a half, I think, to around Veterans Day of 2022, we brought forward a concept to build a community park, kind of mini park in the section of the parking lot between City Hall and the building to the south. And part of that would be to refresh or do something different with the mural that was originally installed by the Rotary Club in the early 2000s. That's quite faded and unrecognizable now. And so there were thoughts of tying in a different theme for the mural on City Hall. But I think City Hall also remains a candidate for an alternative mural. So I think there's a couple of different very prominent locations in the community where we could look to place a mural if the council so directs to serve as an alternative to the current mural. But we'll wait until we hear feedback from you on whether or not we want to move forward with something like that.
I didn't have questions for staff, so I'm just waiting for our own conversation.
Okay.
Sure. So, yes, I am indeed the person who asked for this item to be on the agenda. And I didn't do it triggered by one email. I've heard from different folks out in the community, not necessarily by email, but I do walk around town and go to the grocery store, and I hear from people. And the concerns I heard, nobody was concerned about the sentiment or the value expressed by Black Lives Matter. Uniformly, people were concerned about the fact that it incorporates a logo of a particular organization that people might not necessarily agree with. Now, the trouble with, and the beauty of symbols is that they're multivocal, right? Everybody has a different interpretation about what that symbol means. Not everybody's on the same page about it. So the Black Lives mural incorporates the yellow and black and logo characteristics of a specific organization that engages in political activity that not everybody agrees about. So people were concerned about connecting the sentiment with a particular political organization, right? Everybody agrees on the issues of equity. I didn't hear anything against, equity. So given the fact that this mural is on City Hall, and City Hall is one of the most valuable assets that this community holds. It's owned by the taxpayers and residents and citizens of Half Moon Bay. And they feel strongly about it. When we've talked about moving City Hall, people hate the idea. So it in of itself is a symbol, and people have stewardship over City Hall and its location and things. So I think my impression is people feel very strongly, not just about linking to political organizations, but they have strong feelings about City Hall and what's the appropriate, use of murals and messaging on City Hall. So I felt, since I'd heard from enough people out there, that I felt we should have this discussion. The mural was designated as temporary, and I just wanted us to have a vigorous discussion about what's the appropriate thing to do. I liked Mariah's recommendation for a broader sort of mural that addresses many equity issues. I've heard people say, why can't we have a mural on City Hall about farm workers? Why can't we deal with Roe versus Wade? What if a Palestinian organization comes and asks for something on City Hall that represents them? What if the Anti-Defamation League comes to City Hall and wants to have something about them? We can't satisfy everybody. We don't have a specific policy about murals on City Hall. It's separate from the public art. So, I think I'm hearing more division than I am solidarity. Black Lives Matter, I think we all support that notion. I don't know anybody who, at least in my circles in this community, opposes such a thing. But are we demonstrating it in the best possible way to create solidarity and support, right? So is there an option, to share, celebrate, and support those values in a way that creates more unity and solidarity in our community? We should all feel good about this, right? Then instead of questioning political motives and organizations' stands on issues, I'm not bringing it up because I have an axe to grind against Black Lives Matter or the organization, but I felt I'd heard enough from people that we should have this discussion. That's why I asked for it to be on the agenda. So I'd like to hear from you all.
Okay. Councilmember Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mayor. Every time I see that mural, I am feeling wonderful about what the city has done for diversity and equity. I just am really amazed that we've been able to do that. I think it was a wonderful thing we did, and I think if we cover it up, it sends a message that Black lives don't matter, and they do. And along with what the city manager just said, I think it might make sense to have another mural that expresses diversity and equity for Latinos, the farm workers, the people who made this city great. But I think it would be a travesty if we remove that mural. I think it really represents something very good from this community, and I'm absolutely in favor of keeping that mural. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Jimenez.
Thank you. We know, what the mural represents. Maybe it represents different things to different people. But 2020 was a time that changed, our community. Things have been happening in our community that have been changing, starting in 2014 with Yanira Serrano. What gave us? We lost a young lady. We have the CARES program. That's one of the programs that we have in our community. The mural the Black Lives Matter mural, actually, he represents more than just black and yellow paint on the wall. He actually, that mural, that symbol, fights against all the oppression, that people of color have dealt with for hundreds of years. That's what it represents to me. When I first heard the idea about the mural, it was like in the place where we were supposed to be. I thought it was an odd place to be. I wanted to be more visible, something that you can actually see every time you walk by. Unless you're walking on the parking lot, you will see it. I actually took several pictures of it and posted that mural on my social media. I'm big on my social media, so I made sure that it was there. I don't want an empty wall. I don't want to remove the mural from our community. I want to make sure that the Black Lives Matter mural stays in Half Moon Bay. I like Mariah's idea. When we talked about representing a mural that represents everybody in Half Moon Bay, our heritage, and actually that is part of our heritage now. That mural is part of our heritage. So it's not going to be removed from our community. It stays in Half Moon Bay. That actually gave brought a lot of equity into our community, brought a lot of equity into the United States. Actually, it went outside of the United States. You have to think about it. There were other countries, that supported, the Black Lives Matter. Just with the idea that how much oppression has people of color, have actually dealt with in the United States. It is our heritage. Yanira is our heritage. The tragedy that happened January 23rd is our heritage. It's part of our history now. Years from now, we still have to think about that. We still have to remember that. A big representation of who we are that represents the positive and the negative changes that we're going through. That's history, heritage. I don't want it to be removed unless it's replaced somewhere else where we can honor that. The Black Lives Matter, we can honor Janita, we can honor the farm workers, we can honor our heritage of Half Moon Bay. For now, it stays there. I think we have to continue to have a conversation with our community about, do we want a better place is there a better place for the Black Lives Matter mural in our community? Do we have a better place? If we don't have a better place for it, I'm not up to removing the mural from there. Even now that we're going to have a park, there's going to be, how often do you visit it? How often do you see the mural? I see it often. I walk through there very often. It's a big symbol. What happened, what's been happening. I like to think about a place where we can better see it. The mural. Mariah, I really like your idea. It kind of goes along about having the mural of our heritage of Half Moon Bay. It just gives you opportunity for everybody that visits Half Moon Bay. If he goes on Kelly Avenue on the building, it's a big wall. Driving by through there, walking by through there, you will see that we still, Half Moon Bay, we still support the Black Lives Matter movement. Because it was not just a mural, it was not just a symbol, it actually became a movement. I was born in the 60s, I was born in the 70s, but I know during the 60s, there was a lot of movements that changed our history. Our civil rights movement, the Chicano movement, it was during the 60s. The farm worker movement, it was during the 60s. We still have those, I would like to see that. I would like to see the United Farm Workers flag, flying on our wall representing our farm workers, because we are a community of farm workers. We are a community of opportunity, a community that's bringing equity. We are being on the safety of our community. We're inclusive, we're welcoming. So I do support the Black Lives Matter mural. If we can have a better place to, we can put it, I'll support that too. It represents our community. Thank you.
Councilmember Brownstone.
Thank you. Well, generally, I really appreciate what Vice Mayor Jimenez said. Couldn't agree with you more. And I believe what I heard Mariah say was not to replace the mural, but to maybe add an additional mural. I got that right. So someone else talked about replacement. That's not what I was hearing. Nobody has a monopoly on the meaning of words. There's a lot of people can say freedom first and use it to back up all kinds of agendas, right, that they have. In God we trust. A lot of people can take those words and have all sorts of wars that we fought over for thousands of years for words like that. But, and some people heard the words Black Lives Matter and for whatever reasons interpreted, remember initially as like only Black Lives Matter. That's what people heard when they heard those words. I never heard, that's not what I ever heard. I just heard Black Lives Matter too. Black Lives Matter also. So some people started politicizing. What about this color lives, blue lives, this, all lives? But because it was a reaction to thinking that somehow that message was only Black Lives Matter, and that was never how I think it was intended. And, I think it's always important to humanize the conversation. And, the best way I can think of humanizing it is, what's the impact of those words on our wall? And I was thinking about a story that was actually in the Half Moon Bay Review about 18 months ago. I meant to dig it out before I got here, but I ran out of time. But a lot of you might remember it. There was 4 brothers and sisters. They were black, and they were kind of taking time off with each other to do a tour of the country. I can't remember if it was a 6-month or a year tour. Remember that? Yep. And there was this great photo as part of the story of them standing under our Black Lives Matter mural. And they were interviewed, and they said, wow, you never know what to expect when we go into some small towns. And sometimes we're a little cautious or fearful, depending on what part of the country, but we really felt welcomed when we saw that. We don't see that in a lot of towns. So that's the human impact of having that message up there. And if for some, we have a lot of options. If for some reason the black and yellow lettering gets associated, with some group, I honestly have not heard from a lot of people who've said that. You mentioned Councilmember Ruddick says she's heard from a number of people. I've seen a couple of emails, but I haven't heard a lot of folks complain about it. But I don't care if we have a beautiful italics, Black Lives Matter, in rainbow colors, if we want to replace that actual branding piece, but I think we should definitely keep that message up there. I like it on City Hall. Plenty of people have those signs in front of their houses, It says, we believe in, we believe Black Lives Matter, we believe women have a right to their body, we believe in science. I haven't seen a lot of those signs come down. Most people keep those signs up. So I think it's great. The more murals, the better. I love murals. And if they have messages of unity, great. And it could be an additional messages. Probably if we had a mural like that, Joaquin, they would probably included the original Black Lives Matter in it. That's what I was picturing already. That's because it's part of our history and the legacy, So, yeah, I think we should keep the mural. We have wonderful muralists here who can give us some ideas if there's a branding issue around it. But again, I don't think a lot of people necessarily associated those words with that particular organization. I think most people don't. They associate it with a sentiment of thoughtfulness, a sentiment of, we see you, we respect you. And that's what most people, I think, assign to it, the message. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Well, I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's really, really critical kind of conversation to have. And I thank you, Councilmember Ruddock, for bringing it up, because I have heard from some people, that's a terrible organization. Black Lives Matter, they're full of Nazis and full of, right-wingers, and they're all bad people, and you shouldn't be supporting that statement, Black Lives Matter. More people have said to me, gee, we love it. I feel the same way Councilmember Rarbach does. Every time I see that mural, I feel good. I feel good about who I am and the job that I'm doing and what I think our city represents. Is we're not a city that does things because that's the way they're being done. We're progressive. We are trying to do the best we can for every citizen in this town, not just Black lives, all lives. And I think taking down or painting over a statement like Black Lives Matter right now would be terribly harmful, terrible. And it's not that I don't think there are other ways to say we are unified, or there are other ways to say our heritage is important, or we care about the lesser, the poorer folks in our town, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a bad message to paint it over. It says, I don't believe that Black lives matter. That's what it says. So I am definitely against taking it down. If at some point in the future, this idea of a pocket park in City Hall parking lot becomes a reality, and we decide to paint over the existing mural that's there, it would make sense to also paint over Black Lives Matter, maybe. I don't know. We could have that discussion later. I don't think we need to have that discussion right now. The pocket park is not a reality yet, and it's something that may or may not ever happen. The idea of paying honor to our heritage is very important, and I love the idea of the Kelly Avenue site for that. I think, though, we don't start with our Portuguese and our Mexican forebears. We start with our American Indian heritage. That's where it all began. It didn't start with, with the people that came and invaded this country and killed off the American Indians. Okay, so that's an aside. That doesn't have anything to do with this. I don't know if I can show that photograph. I received a photograph today from one of our constituents in the email, and someone else mentioned it tonight, but it just made me feel so wonderful and warm and fuzzy all over. And so Jessica's going to try to put it up on the screen. I don't know if we can do that or not, but it's my statement about how I feel about our mural. There it is.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is.
I think that was the family that was traveling across the United States. So that's how I feel. And I don't think we need to make a decision tonight. I don't know how about the rest of you feel, but I think the decision to do nothing is the right way to go right now.
I would agree. I wasn't anticipating a decision, only a conversation, and I think it's been a great conversation. And you guys are great souls, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I will say I've heard, I think, a little bit of consensus that this concept of this heritage mural is something that we should pursue. And I think one of the approaches we'll consider is something we heard tonight, which is for instance, the mural we did for the Pumpkin Festival, we put together kind of a community committee. It sounds like we want a much more democratic approach to this and really engage the entire community with this. So we'll look at who on staff might be the best to lead something like this and start doing some outreach. Funding is going to be an issue, and we'll hear more about that in our next item. But it's never stopped us before. Why should it stop us now, right?
I think it is critical that we get the History Association involved in it.
Yeah.
Because they have the information that we need.
Yeah.
So they can help us.
I think it's also important to state that there is a strong consensus this evening not to remove that current mural, because anything other than that, I don't think I'd feel great if I was black. So I think there needs to be a solid message that, in honor of those 4 young people in that picture, you still have our full support, and this is who we stand for as Half Moon Bay.
Do you want to vote?
Yeah. So I'd love to vote.
Can you make the motion?
Yeah. I move that we all agree to keep the Black Lives mural on City Hall.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion then passes. Is that legal, Catherine, that we have a motion without having it agendized?
Yes, that is fine. This was broadly agendized as a discussion, and I'll note for the record that it will be reflected in the minutes for this evening.
Thank you. Okay, we now move on to item 3C, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, the ACFR, for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023.
While Ken's pulling that up, I'll just share an anecdote. This item used to be called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. And much as we heard tonight, words have meaning, and I don't know what it means, but apparently that acronym has a very offensive meaning to some people. So a few years ago, they adopted a new title, which is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, the ACFR. Doesn't roll off the tongue the same, but I guess it offends less people, and here we are. So a new piece of vernacular, the ACFR. Ken, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and members of the public. So today's presentation is on the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, the ACFR, for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, so last year. This report is the city's official annual audited statements from the prior year. This is an important best practice for us in cities because our accounting books are reviewed by an independent auditor. And from there, we create our financial statements. The city received something called an unmodified opinion or a clean audit from this independent auditor. That's good news for us. That means that the numbers that you see on the screen and in our report have been audited, are presented fairly according to the auditor and without material misstatement. It's a big report. It includes everything the city did last year, all of our funds, general fund, capital projects, sewer. But there are two main sections that summarize everything, and that's towards the front of the report, the transmittal letter, a letter from our city manager, and then the management discussions analysis. So this is very high level, some highlights. The city ended the year with a surplus despite our revenues falling. Council remembers TOT fell towards the later half of the year. We did end the year in a surplus, meaning that we spent less than what we initially anticipated. And I have a slide coming up on that. Reserves are fully funded at 50% of operating expenditures per policy. And then finally, rising costs and our revenues falling remain our biggest considerations going forward. For the general fund specifically, here's how the year ended last year in comparison with our budget. In the first column, we have our budget, and the second column is our actuals, and the last is the difference between the two. As you can see, revenues came up short by $205K, and then on expenditure side, we came under by about 1.4. About half of that expenditure being coming under is from salary savings. We had a couple of positions throughout the year that we didn't fill right away or are still open to this day that we had some salary savings with. And then the other half is just day-to-day, not spending as much as we anticipated. We tend to budget conservatively. So this is that flushing out through our general fund. Overall, we ended the year with 1.2 more than what we had planned for, which is that bottom right number. That number goes to our unassigned fund balances. Here's what it looks like on the revenue side specifically. Transient occupancy taxes, we came up short by $750K. And this is mostly from the period from February to June. As mentioned at the first quarter of our fiscal year, these revenues are still stagnating. Initially, back in February, we thought that the dip was potentially temporarily or a moment in time due to storms or what have you. But now that it's still in us, still with us, and we've seen it in currently today, we're working on identifying how much of that dip is economic downturn and how much of that is maybe last year we had the coast experienced a lot of one-time activity, and this is the new normal. We're trying to assess and analyze what we can expect going forward. Mid-year will be key for us. We will have more information on how this year will turn out and a little bit of a peek of what next year could bring. Sales and use tax was also lower than what we had hoped for by about $200K. That being lower suggests that there is an element of just economic slowing down and the economy slowing down. This is another line item that we're hoping mid-year will give us more information on. Other revenues, we received more, about $500K more. This is mostly from investment income and charges for services. Looking ahead, here's our fund balances and reserves look like going into through the remainder of this fiscal year on June 30th, 2024. In the first column, we adopted a budget back in April, thinking that we were in the year at almost $200K in unassigned. With the audit complete and the numbers confirmed, right now we're estimating that on June 30th, our unassigned balances will be $1.4 million. However, it is a better outlook, but we are still estimating a structural deficit in future years. And because of that, staff is not recommending assignment of these funds this fiscal year. So the audit does not review future years, only years past, but we have a couple slides following this about next year.
Thank you, Ken. I will jump in on this. This really ties into several of our more recent presentations, and just a reminder that at this time we still are estimating an ongoing budget deficit of $3.9 million. What that means is that looking forward, we expect right now, without any changes, that our revenues will be almost $4 million less than our ongoing expenditures. So changes are necessary. As you know, we have an internal team working on evaluation of several different approaches, which I'll share on the next slide, to addressing this. I think one key factor is we don't expect to be able to solve this in 1 year. We're going to have to make changes to operations, to spending, revenues, and those are going to take time to implement. Luckily, we have been really prudent over the years. We have very strong reserves, not just our operating reserves, which are much higher than mandated by law. We also have the economic uncertainty reserve that puts us on a strong position to help smooth us through some of the changes that we'll need to implement. But as Ken mentioned, having additional fund balance will only help us to smooth that out longer as we implement changes. So we are grateful that we've got additional funds in the bank right now and at the end of the fiscal year, but we anticipate those will be necessary to help us carry through the next several years. We will provide the strategies next, and as Ken also said, the mid-year review, which will be in February or March, will be really important for us to start to set the table for what next year's budget and going forward will look like. One key note is on the consent agenda tonight, there was a small change to our finance subcommittee, which is 2 members of the council that will work very closely with staff to address these issues. And with that change now, we'll be scheduling a meeting before the end of the end of the calendar year to start to lay out those strategies, and we expect to meet with that committee on a pretty regular basis, preparing for the mid-year and then going into the budget. Much more engagement and involvement than in previous years. On the next slide, we lay out some of the tasks that we've taken on this year to prepare for future budgets. Even before all of this, we were prepared to bring forward a fee study and cost allocation study. We've reached a milestone there, and we'll continue to work with our departments to finalize that analysis. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do expect that to be completed before the mid-year, and that can be part of that discussion.
We hope to have the cost allocation portion of it done by mid-year. The fee study portion may take a little bit longer.
But that could be brought forward with the budget next year?
Yes, to be brought forward with the budget.
Perfect. The main focus of staff right now has been on an expenditure review. We have a team that has gone line item by line item through the entire budget. I felt like it was really important for us at this point to understand every expenditure, no matter what size. And we've determined at this point what needs to change, what may change, and what we can't change. And the good news is we think we found some savings, which is really, really important. It's not enough to fix the structural deficit, but it certainly gets us on our way. And so we'll be looking at which of these changes we can actually just implement mid-year this year and get the ball rolling with this fiscal year and see if we can increase the savings in the current fiscal year, and then obviously implement the rest as we move forward into future fiscal years. The other thing that we'll be doing, especially with the subcommittee, is looking at revenue enhancements. This may be, additional tax measures or changes to our taxes. Obviously, that requires a vote of the people, and so any changes to that will need to come in November of 2024, which means we'll have to make some decisions on what we want to pursue, if anything, very early next year. And I think that's the approach we're going to have to take, as a combination of pretty significant cuts in our expenditures, tied with hopefully some additional revenues going forward. Again, we're confident that we'll be able to address this over the next couple of years, and your foresight in creating those reserves is really going to help us do that with hopefully minimal impact to the community, because we know how important our services are to the community, and unfortunately these steps may require some tough decisions in the next couple of years. So I think with that, Ken, we're ready to take questions.
Council, questions? Well, I want to thank you. It was a fabulous report, Ken. And although it's a little bit daunting, I think thanks to Matthew and the staff, we're going to be able to deal with it. So I'm not scared.
Just a question now. My understanding is the city has to pass a balanced budget every year, correct? There was something in the staff report that mentioned we were aiming to be able to approve a balanced budget, but it's my understanding that we have to, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify what that means. A balanced budget simply means that we adopt a budget where our revenues, which can include the use of reserves or unassigned fund balances, are balanced with our expenditures. So in a scenario, if we didn't address our structural deficit, at some point we could run out of reserves. At that point, we couldn't adopt a budget that estimates $2 million or $20 million in revenue and $25 million in expenditures. That would be an unbalanced budget. Right. But as long as we have reserves and unassigned fund balances, we can balance the budget by utilizing these one-time funds from a savings account. That's unsustainable over the long term, which is why we're looking to balance our revenues and our expenditures before we utilize too much of our reserves and our unassigned fund balances.
So maybe we do this already, I should know this, but when the use of unassigned reserves is necessary, that comes to the council for deliberation, that it's not just a staff decision, that, it's part of a decision that comes forward to us. Because it seems to me it's very serious at this point to tap into unassigned reserves unless it's a policy decision that's well vetted. It'd be dangerous to do it otherwise, I think.
I don't think staff has the authority to utilize the budget without your approval, but to your point, I don't think it's a practice we've had to utilize in the past too much. Maybe we've used it to fund some capital improvements and other things. I think what you're asking is that we're really explicit as the need arises to utilize those unassigned fund balances, and as we come forward with next year's budget, to be really clear how much we're starting to eat into those unassigned fund balances.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we don't want to. I mean, we have
Right.
pension obligations, we still have debt that we have to, cover. So I want us to be, I think you've been very serious and conservative. I think that's great, and I want us to continue to be. But I raised a question with staff during our one-on-ones today about the net position statement. And, there was a statement in the audit about, capital assets were a certain percentage and restricted funds were a certain percentage. Are there any best practices, target levels that those things should be at ideally, or is it just?
For net position, I'm unaware of a best practice. At least it's not one's not coming to mind. There's a best practice regarding reserves, and that is 16% of operating expenditures.
That's standard for municipalities, kind of a thing?
That's from the GFOA, which is the government association.
Okay, and I think we're doing better than that.
Yeah, I'll share that best practice, I think, applies much better to larger cities, which with much larger budgets and much more flexibility. I think that our much higher than 16% reserves are a reflection of the size of our city and the need to have stronger reserves because we just don't have that flexibility in our budget. So, budgeting in the public sector is always a balance of utilizing taxpayer dollars to provide the services and the quality that the community expects, balancing that with making sure we remain fiscally solvent. And so I think, I worked for the county for many years. They don't need to exceed those reserves amounts in the same way because their budget is so large and they have a lot of room to move things around and make changes. We are so small, unfortunately, it means we've just got to hold more of those tax dollars in reserve for times just like this. And to continue services at times like this.
And then lastly, this is not really a question but a comment, and that would be to look again, I think, at an empty house tax as a way to raise money for, affordable housing or our affordable housing programs. And to really look creatively at making sure that, where there are free riders, that we deal with that, that we're not socializing costs. Try to capture as much as we can in areas where we might do better, I guess is what I'm saying. Be creative. Yeah, okay.
The only other thing I'd like to share, just as a reminder to the council and the community, is our current structural deficit is much more a product of inflation of costs of services, both those that we directly provide, but also those that we have to contract for as a contract city. We have seen stagnation of revenues, as Ken has said, but revenues continue to grow, just not at the pace that expenditures have. In the last year, we've seen that exponentially increase. And so I just want to remind the community of how prudent this council has been with our tax dollars, and some of these changes were unforeseen, absolutely unforeseen. Our position as we started to prepare for the budget last year was very different than where we were as we adopted the budget. So I think that same prudence will be included in the work that we do over the next couple of years. And as the mayor said, we're not worried. We're just serious, and we're going to resolve these issues within the next couple of years so that we can continue to provide quality services, be innovative as we have in the past, and do great things. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3D.
Mayor,
do we have any public comment?
No, there is a resolution. We have to accept. We need a resolution to a motion, yeah. We need a resolution to adopt the, okay. I move that the City of Half Moon Bay, that we receive the City of Half Moon Bay Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023.
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Councilmember Rohraback?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Mayor Penrose?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we move on to item 3D. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Community. There's no PowerPoint for this item. This is a straightforward item, but state law actually requires a verbal presentation on all items regarding the city manager contract. So this item is an item to approve an amendment to the city manager contract, which is dated August 20th, 2022. Matthew's contract requires an annual performance evaluation that was completed recently, and the council directed me to come back with a contract that would amend the an amendment that would amend the contract to give it a CPI adjustment that was. And this is a 3% cost of living adjustment that was provided to all city employees as of July 1st, except for Matthew. But with this contract amendment, that would go into effect. And then this contract amendment also provides a one-time allocation of 117 hours of administrative leave in acknowledgement of the city manager's hard work on the last year, particularly in light of the winter storms and the January 23rd mass shooting. This admin leave actually is sort of a use it or lose it provision that would need to be used by the end of the contract term, which is currently August of 2025, unless further extended. And so this is all I have to say. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, the recommendation is to approve the amendment by motion.
Does the council have any questions? No. May we have a motion?
Could we just say so moved? Oh, do we need public comment?
We asked about public comment, didn't we? No, we didn't. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
Can I just say so moved on this?
Yes, that's fine.
So moved.
Second.
May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Councilmember Rohrbach?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jimenez?
Yes.
Mayor Penrose?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're moving on to commission committee updates. Seeing none, for future discussion, possible agenda items. Seeing none, I'm adjourning this meeting. Thank you all.